there were three generations standing in the graveyard. One was the old generation who has experienced Kashmir. One was the new generation, that the kid who was going to school. He came from school. He came there. He asked the old man the question, and experience of older generation answering the education of the youth. And there was in between Haider, who was the mid generation, and everyone said that he was in dilemma. So it was a dilemma between the older generation and the younger generation.
We all know that Hamlet is a very famous play written by Shakespeare. In India, we have different adaptations made from Shakespearean plays from time to time, as plays, as movies. Out of all those adaptations, I think three stands out very distinctively by the same director, of course, Vishal Bhardwaj. He adapted Macbeth to Maqbool, Othello to Omkara, and then Hamlet was the third installment in the trilogy. His adaptations and the way he Indianizes that entire era of Shakespeare into an like a modern socio-political context. I personally think it's one of the best works of in terms of adaptation. So, is there anybody who watched the film? What were your thoughts when you did watch the film?
Roger Ebert had once said about Shawshank Redemption that only on my second view did it shine more than in my first view. The same thing happened with this movie. I mean, I can go on, like, this is like peak cinema, art, and everything. I was mesmerized with the simple storytelling. In fact, my basic hype was, Irfan is going to be there. Irfan aayega, ye uski entry, ye wo. He's there for 10 minutes. But what an impact of those 10 minutes, man. My God. I was completely like Tabu, Irfan, they don't care what length of portrayal, what screen space they get. They're completely like do 100% justice to their role, and that's it. There's no compromise there. I was blown away with the entire thing.
The most shocking thing for me is the end of the movie, because I was ready to see everyone dying. Knowing the plot of Hamlet, I expected also Haider to die, and instead he chooses not to kill his uncle and just goes away. And it was mind-blowing for me, amazing, changing the end of a tragedy, of a Shakespearean tragedy in this way. And it has also a deep meaning. It gives you the idea that breaking this chain of violence, it is possible. Moreover, it's one of the few movies which deals with Kashmir in an anti-rhetorical way.
And Vishal Bhardwaj is that director. I never got that vibe from him, that I could like his movies. I was always Dharma movies, chill, aisa kuch. And he always brought that dark vibe, everything was just black, grey. I never liked it, but then I thought giving it a try. And I loved it, but I'm not sure if I understood it.
So the fact that it's transposed in a very different location from the original play, it's really interesting, and I think it takes off the didascalic way of transposing it. So I really liked it.
So for people who might have read or know a little bit about Hamlet, the play, you might know that it's a very common thing in Shakespearean tragedies that the ending is always everybody dying. Like most people dying. Here as well, we see in Hamlet, actually, everybody dies. In Haider, you see there's a slight difference. Khurram is crippled and Haider has lost his shit, and that's how it ends. They don't die like in the most physical form possible. What do you think about that change? And let's just talk about what do you think happened post the last scene. Where do you think Haider went? I think it's very important to understand the context in which the film is set. Of course, it's on the Kashmir conflict, but it's in a very specific time in the Kashmir conflict, when it was at its peak in the 1990s. So to leave the film at an optimistic point, like the one you mentioned, very interesting idea of having a sunshine-related motif in the film through, let's say, actual sceneries. But I personally feel that would take away from the impact that the film would have it would go into the more fictionalized, hopeful future. Irrespective of that, I don't see the ending as a very optimistic one. He's gone crazy. He has no hope, no reason to live. I personally believe, just for poetic justice, for the sake of poetic justice, he will go to the same bridge and he'll drown himself in jail. Like that's, I think, this is exactly like the most poetic way to wrap it up. Basically, is what I feel. Like the epilogue of the film. Um, and for Khurram, I'm not very sure. Genuinely not very sure. I think Rudar will just come out of his car and shoot him. Like he's just literally outside in his car. If you think about it, he's not gone anywhere. So that might happen. Or I feel Haider and Rudar might have a fallout of some kind, because I don't know. Someone will tell him, or he'll get an idea that Rudar actually was the one who brainwashed my mother to come and wear that bomb vest and blow herself off. So he'll realize that even he was lying. He was even his such was not such enough. So I believe like everybody will die eventually. They have just not shown it in the same manner, because they also wanted to show to continue the confusion that is there in Heather's head. Like if you have a closure that he has seeked revenge by killing that person, the film ends there. He didn't want to end it over there. So I still feel it's still brimming inside him. But again, like the way he hadn't killed him when he was doing his namaz, or sorry, he was pleading guilty in a sense. He's not doing it here because right now he's crippled and he's in a state of genuine desperation and vulnerability. So he's not feeling that guilt of doing what he has done, or like being that evil. So again, like it leads to him not getting revenge in the manner he wants to. He wants to basically keh ke lene ka man hai uska, like the way like how Gangs of Wasseypur happened.
I kind of have a different thing about the ending. When the entire thing is it's amounting to this final moment where he's going to finally he even aligns the gun as it uski dono aankhon mein goliyan daakna. So he's like just about to blow his head off, but he decides not to because his mother's voice rings in his ears कि इंतकाम से सिर्फ इंतकाम पैदा होता है. And this is not something that is just coming up. Even Kulbhushan Kharbanda's character says it before in the movie. So it's like it's built up. थोड़ा सा ऐसा suddenly नहीं ला दिया. So in the original play in Hamlet, what happens is he's poisoned, right? So how about is Intakam like kind of an allegory for poison here? He's choosing not to consume poison that way and not poison his soul. And maybe that way he's just, I am kind of hopeful about his ending because after facing so much, after having lost every single person that cared for him or gave a shit about him, he chooses to not finally go ahead with that, not to kill and not to, kind of that way. But again, these two are adversaries. These two can't stay alive for too long. So that is one thing that keeps bugging me. And one thing that you said, that Sankal just said about Rudar, I feel that Rudar personally coming and killing someone is kind of, I feel it's a little contradictory to his character because he seems like a very catalytic presence. Like he's just about to bring about, he's there to bring about change. He doesn't want to actively do something.
He's big
So
boss.
fate keeps him alive just so that he can pass on messages.
It's also about having the right sort of nostalgia as well at the same time, and the right tribute to the play, but also have that adaptability based on the modern sensibilities. Because which is why, like for example, two to three things I really like is, for example, the character of Shraddha Kapoor. Although I'm still uncertain about her performance, and like when she goes mad or she goes crazy, I'm not really convinced. Like it doesn't build up, and that has nothing to do with only her. It's also the same thing in the play as well. Like in the play also, when Ophelia starts going crazy, I just can't match. Like also because there's such a high magnitude of craziness going on in the background, I just can't like grasp why is it that she's gone crazy to an extent that it's no coming back. I couldn't like understand it too well for myself. But what I liked about the fact that she had a lot of command and authority of her own, which Ophelia did not have, the original character. And if you know, in the original, there is Ophelia and there is Horatio. Horatio is the best friend of Hamlet. Here, Vishal Bhardwaj, the writer, has mixed Horatio and Ophelia, and that is Shraddha Kapoor. Like it's a mixture of two characters, which is why it's so interesting that he realized, you know what, they have a similar vibe, they have a similar energy, they bring the same thing on the table. Why not just mix those and then make it into a third character, which has the elements and characters and plot of both the things. So I like these smart decisions also, which have been made with regards to just trying to make sure that the female character has a little bit more authority than what Ophelia used to have.
Since I haven't read Hamlet, so as the movie progressed, I kind of expected this ending because when they were together, he says this line, "Kiske sach mein sach," and all that whole dialogue, and also
My
when
favorite ever thing in a film.
yes, and when they were at the graves, and that the kid was asking, why is the skeleton always laughing? So he says that because when you are dead, you realize that you haven't fully lived, and then it doesn't end with the death. So I saw that as kind of premonition that not all of them will die, because and also one of the reasons I also think is that sometimes death is the punishment, but at harsher times life is the punishment. Like the same dialogue was told by Tabu. Like she asked him that एक last favor कर सकते हो, kill me as well, and then he says कि तुम्हारी जिंदगी ही तुम्हारी सजा है. So I think he committed a deadlier act by not killing Khurram. And also about the future of Haider, I think he will become a kind of person whom everyone considers as a madman, but who kind of knows the future. And it was there in Mohenjo-daro and many other like Banshees. Maybe there was this old woman who who went on
Yes,
telling
she was the
truths and
Banshee.
everything. Yes, but no one was paying attention to it. Who knew like what is going to come. So I think he might become one of those persons.
And also he didn't kill him because at that point he was begging for it. He wanted that, and by not giving him that, he had an edge over in that sense. It wasn't about the moral high ground actually. It was just about not giving him what he wanted. The constant tussle between acting and not acting on it. One very interesting thing I thought about earlier when we had discussed this was procrastination of revenge, which is again a theme in Gangs of Wasseypur as well. Like you're just procrastinating revenge. You're finding excuses. You're avoiding the reality. Like you're not confronting it. I wanted to understand, according to you, and also some of the play critics tell the reason why he's not able to kill him is not that he's praying so I'll not kill him or something. He's just finding excuses to delay it in a sense. Why do you think he's delaying it? Like, do you think he's just confused that maybe Khurram hasn't done this, or is it just that he feels ki violence is not the right thing to do?
The only reason I can think is that if he will kill Khurram, he will have no purpose to live and even
Yeah.
no one to live for, because everyone is dead. Like, who will he live for? And what will be his purpose? Because if he will be alive, at least, he'll have something in mind, he'll have something to live for.
Heather is like, what else we here for?
I majorly think it's dilemma. Dilemma plays a major role in all of our lives, even in the tiniest of things. You go to buy a shoe or a shirt or a trouser, and like, shall I take the blue one or the black one, the blue faded one or the blue dark one? There is always a dilemma when you. So if we can have regular dilemmas in the trivialities around us. Someone who is, who in his mind is trying to sort of avenge his father's death, sort of avenging someone's death who was very near to him. But then it takes a lot of gut strength also to, to bring out that sheer force. I think it's very easy to say, go and kill, or, put into the ears that you should avenge my death. But to bring that into reality by the instrumental factor that Haider is in the film, I think this dilemma shows his journey. That is the way the journey of Hamlet was also shown by Shakespeare. In that age, you have to keep the time scenario also in mind, that it was written in that age. Things were different. The entire setup and the entire scenario, the backdrop was different. But keeping that same thing, that when I'm adapting a Shakespearean play, I cannot change a major element. And this is dilemma is a very constant element in like many Shakespearean plays. You'll find it in Julius Caesar, you find it in Macbeth, you find it in Hamlet. It's probably one of the characteristics of the the tragic hero on which the play revolves around.
Play which I saw there, it was Hamlet enters to the city when he got the news that his father has died, and all the fuss around that begins. Actually, I think he was not sure on the first half of the play that whether he was also finding because in the film also we see Haider standing with the other Kashmiri peoples with a placard and asking, "Where is my father?" So Haider's character was to first ask the question. So, and as Arnab said, he was in dilemma. So I think his questions were not answered. So at the end of in the end also, it is not shown exactly that Khurram has killed directly his father. It was also about the political power and everything.
When he's trying to decide whether to kill him or not, he's also there. It's also something that has to do with the politics of Kashmir, because they're not doing anything can also be something that it's an action, because it's impossible to not doing anything, especially in a situation where violence is there, and so not doing anything is somehow being on the side of people oppressing you. And so when it's like even when you don't want to be on one side or the other, you are put in the position of you are like Haider's father. He doesn't want to back the militants, but he's just doing his job. But for this, he's killed. So it's like it's not possible to be neutral. And so this dilemma is, I think, it's more it's even bigger in this situation.
I also think that that was one of the few moments in the film when he had time to think about it, because most of the killings, that like the ones he didn't intend it, most of those happened as a response to some action that was done. Like it was almost as a defense, like because he didn't necessarily wanted to kill the policeman or she's father. So that was the time when he actually had the time to think that is it really fueling my purpose, is it really helping me? So the impulsivity was actually kind of lowered, and he was kind of those few moments that he was in his senses, to actually think. Because as Saurav mentioned, his purpose when he came wasn't really to kill anyone, but it was just to know what happened to his father and where is he.
It was the realization that of the futility of it all. I felt like I think that moment when he had at the graveyard earlier, just realizing that eventually it's going to be the same for everybody, and who knows. I don't know if that felt in his mind, but just that feeling of, I think that not just for him but for us as well. I think what we need to sort of understand from it all is the futility of revenge, the futility of anything that we do, futility of a man or a woman's purpose, and how death eventually is going to humble you down eventually. Let's go more into the death wala element and his existentialism, just like for a little more. Firstly, what do you think of the skull as a symbol? Like, what does it mean to you, according to you? Apart from that, like that entire scene when all the three graveyards are grave diggers are singing, and just having that moment, was it important? Firstly, like, did it really matter? Why if they would have cut it out, would have really made any difference to the story?
So the graveyard scene was, I will like to start with the song, that thing Aona. So the starting of the song is very much fascinating. So it starts with they are digging with the beats. Means that thing is very much fascinating. Means how Vishal Bhardwaj creates that, I don't know. There was a complete dialogue sequence between I think in the play there was a kind of dialogue sequence between the grave digger and Hamlet. But here he translated it into a song. So the song purely means what to say. It tells about everything. A kid was there who comes to them, the three old men, and asks something, and they replies in the means tune only, means in the rhythm of the song only. So there were three generations standing in the graveyard. One was the old generation who has experienced Kashmir. One was the new generation, that the kid who was going to school. He came from school, He came there, he asked the old man the question, and experience of older generation answering the education of the youth. And there was in between Heather, who was the mid generation, and everyone said that he was in dilemma. So it was a dilemma between the older generation and the younger generation.
For me personally, it's the one of the best things ever I've seen in film. Also because death is not just being personified, but death is seen as a sensual element over here. I feel like, so when I have read some interpretations of Hamlet as well, what I've understood is that. Uh, so death is basically calling you. You are anyways going to face life's trials and tribulations on that side. What's the point? You're going to come here anyways. Come here now itself. Come and sleep. Come. I'm waiting. Like, it's a very like hypnotic thing that death is doing. We've seen Yamraj in our films, sure, but that is a very different thing that we see. Adding that element of existentialism and adding that element of nothing, nobody really matters eventually. And what was that? Ozymandias that poem. I think there's a very strong parallel with that. If anybody has seen Breaking Bad, they would also get the reference. Like, everybody, you're going to fall eventually. The king is going to fall eventually. Your statue is going to fall eventually. Here as well, you're a king, you're a bona, you're a chota lamba, whatever you are, everybody's going to end up at the same place. So just having that entire thing really made the entire film so much more texturous, added that rich thematic element to it, and made the film so much more dense and so much more than just the politics and just the plot.
When directors, especially when prolific directors work with writings of great authors, it takes a certain journey for a person, for a director, to be so acquainted with the author's work, with the author's style, to bring in that kind of an element. When Ray did Charulata, he was already so acquainted with Tagore's work that he could incorporate the changes or the adaptations which he wanted. When Vishal Bhardwaj is doing Haider, when he's adapting Hamlet to Haider, we have to understand that he has already passed the journey doing Maqbool and an Omkara, right? So he has already sailed in that journey. He understands that one very major element in Shakespearean drama is the premonition of any ominous event happening. The three witches in Macbeth, the Artemidorus' fate foretelling in Julius Caesar. And so to bring it out in the Indian scenario context and the most thematic way, see, he maintains the three things, he maintains the Shakespearean element, he maintains the element and a number factor also. So he brings those three old man, and he brings those skull element which are very symbolical of death, and a graveyard which is which is like a fate, a mortal fate to everyone. So just to show that death is going to happen, death is a shadow lurking upon everyone's fate today or tomorrow. So I think that takes the journey of a person with the work of the person whom he's adapting.
I have heard this a bit, that Vishal Bhardwaj did not really grow up reading Shakespeare in that extensive manner. I think while traveling one day in a train, he saw somebody reading one of the Shakespearean play. I think it was Macbeth. I'm not very sure. And somebody just gifted him, or they were talking about it, and that's how he started to get into it properly. So it was a very random, accidental manner in which he got into it. His first film, Maqbool, came in 2003, Macbeth adaptation. But I think in 1999 or 2000 was the first time when he actually got into Shakespeare properly. So that's when he eventually ended up doing all the things. But one interesting thing about him is that he's not just adapted Shakespeare. He has done Ruskin Bond. He has done several others also. So he's good at adapting things very well in general. So, but the sensitivity with which he is able to do this is also because his understanding goes way beyond just cinema. He is or like just the film as a form. He's also music composer. He knows a lot of other political, socio-political things as well, which I think really helps in getting a better understanding of the context where you're going to set this new adaptation. So one scene I remember, I would love if you could talk more about it, was the first scene when Heather comes back home and he sees Ghazala and Khurram, enjoying or just having a good time apparently. So what was your analysis, interpretation of that scene? Like, what all things you remember from that scene? Do you think Ghazala was wrong at any part? Or what do you think about the way the entire scene has been shot? Do you think Heather is wrong in being angry on seeing what is happening? What are your thoughts on that scene entirely?
Perspectives again, coming to that particular scene which you talk about. Heather coming, I mean, you have to understand the journey of the characters. Heather is grieved, deeply grieved, because he knows his father is missing at that point. And clearly, the first mention of that his mother is at his uncle's place is not a very, not something which makes him very happy. When Shraddha's character mentions that, like, your mom is at your uncle's place, he immediately there is a note of discontentment on his face. We see that on screen clearly. So it's clearly understood that he's someone who is not very favorable to his doesn't have a very amicable situation with his uncle. So that's the first point of conflict there. And in addendum, he walks in and he naturally expects that his mother should be grieving because her husband is missing. Her husband is probably, gone. But to his amazement, he finds that his mother is pretty amused by and pretty content. It doesn't seem to be affected at all, for a woman whose husband has gone missing and is thriving in such dire circumstances, she is happily and merrily singing and all. So Heather's reaction is very much justified when we see it from Heather's end. If we come to Ghazala's side, when she later explains, it obviously looks at a very wrongdoing on Ghazala's part when we see it from our lenses because we are journeying with Heather, right? The film titles with Heather, right? So the audience is supposed to be like we're journeying with Heather. So later when Ghazala says that, I was tired, I was tired of every day thriving in this fear that something would happen to us, something would happen to us, something would happen to us. Not that she had a bent of interest in Khurram. Whatever Khurram had in his back of mind was different, but not that she reciprocated that fully. The adaptation, I'm talking about the adaptation, I'm not talking about what was there exactly in the play. I'm talking about this adaptation here, what is shown in the adaptation. That not necessarily she had everything in, what Khurram had in mind. Not that she reciprocated, but she just sought comfort or sort of a alternative solace in him, which he made a abuse of, or which he took a misadvantage of. So coming from that point, she is trying to find some solace maybe. So if we look at it Ghazala's point of view, it is different. If we look at it Haider's point of view, it is different. So it builds up the conflict between, and that scene probably gives us the scope to widen the rift already. Heather have had not so pleasant experiences with his mother in his childhood when she had emotionally blackmailed her and made him go outside for studies, like that infamous gun scene. So he already has a past, and this scene just adds up everything to that present to take it forward. The rift widens. We see the characters going apart instead of the mother and son bonding over the fallout of over the disappearance which has happened. So I think that the scene was very what they call in technical terms is the hinge point, because that infuriates Heather, that acts as a kerosene to Heather's burning already burning senses.
What made me more confused was Ghazala's reaction to when Heather looks at them. It's a very confused reaction, like of somebody who feels caught. There's two sides to it. That reaction was like, oh shit, I've been caught. But it could have also been because Heather would have thought that something is wrong, which is why my reaction is like that. So it's very like a confused reaction, but really well performed to show that confusion. But yeah, I just felt there was a growing tension, or something already existed. But I still don't see Khurram completely evil. I would have loved to see more of Khurram in a like where he's just alone, because every person had an alone scene. Khurram didn't have a proper alone scene.
The
Like why did he want to kill his brother, apart from the political, any reasons that were there embedded in their childhood maybe, or something? Because what I felt was like a very slightly what I felt, if you remember the scene when Tabu had come home, it was a flashback scene when they were deciding about whether Heather needs to go out or not. So at that point, if you remember, Khurram is bringing tea. He's sitting on the floor, and he's like a passive influence. He's not like the Khurram we see once he's all a politician. So I feel that sense of wanting more power, that could have been just through one scene, explored a little bit more, so that we would know, okay, this is the reason. Maybe he's a less loved kid, because his elder brother is a doctor now, and respected and all of that. So like just one scene or one dialogue would have been enough to get a better sense of why there is so much want to actually be the greatest in that region.
I also feel like in that scene, Haider is looking at Ghazala and Khurram through this sheer curtain. That curtain signifies a layer of misunderstanding, if you will. He's looking at them from a lens of uh, anger, possible hatred, the fact that his father is missing and the mother is busy rejoicing probably with his uncle. That infuriates him, but because he is so consumed by grief that he is not able to see clearly. The confusion that you mentioned, the mother's expression, I still think of that expression as something that Heather might take it in the wrong manner. She is, in her eyes, she is not doing anything wrong. She's just tired from being sad all the time. If you notice in the scene, there's this small moment where she laughs, she looks up, and you see a hint of tear in her eyes. So it's not like she's enjoying in the real sense, maybe just trying to get away from all that is troubling her at that moment. And when she looks at Heather, she just drops everything and goes to him. So maybe just trying to explain to him that things are not how they look.
The curtain or the parda being used in all the three films Vishal Bhardwaj has made on Shakespeare's work. It's there in Maqbool, it's there in Omkara, it's here as well. So it's a recurring motif, which is genuinely fascinating. Another time it is used in this film is when the nikah is happening, the shadi is happening, the wedding is happening, and like she's saying Kabul hai, and he's just saying no, and Kabul hai, no. So like that, and the third time it doesn't say that, it doesn't do that. It is a very interesting direction that has been given to the actor. On the third time, don't do it. I just feel it's a very small thing, but it really works very well. I believe. Yeah.
But by the third time, it's final, so he
Yeah.
cannot do anything about it anyway.
Exactly, but like that's how, like
Yeah.
if you remember, have you seen Uri? In the film Uri, if you remember, there was initially when the person who's died, they're giving him a proper, what is that called, a send off, they're doing a proper respect ceremony for the person, and all Vicky Kaushal, all the other army men are standing, and they are saying that war cry, Balidan Param Dharma, Balidan Param Dharma. And the third time he's not able to finish it. Like he stops and he just breaks. That small thing, like here as well. The third time he did not do that. Like a very interesting addition as an actor also, and probably as a director also. Just don't do the third time.
Mirror is also a recurring motif in Shakespeare. So mirror is used as an element for the character, that they reconfirms their self, that am I doing right, or it perfectly explains the dilemma. Means in Omkara also, I think Saif Ali Khan breaks the mirror. In Maqbool also, Irfan Khan sees himself in the mirror, and in that particular scene, Tabu's character, for the first time, I feel that she gets an authoritative power, because she slaps Heather, and Heather then goes off. So from there the journey starts, that he thinks now no one is on my side. Means if I have lost everyone from my side, I don't believe Khurram, means his uncle, and now my mother has also slapped me, and I got detached from the mother. So now the things builds up. And after that monologue scene, famous monologue where that he tells about azadi, means na hame mile azadi and all the things, that scene. After that scene, he tells, means his mother in the car, means he goes completely psycho, kind of, means he lost himself after that speech. So he tells his mother कि अब अब्बू जान मर गए, आप अब आपको छुप छुप के डुएट करना नहीं पड़ेगा. So that again connects back. So means that scene was very important to establish, means the latter part of, means the mystery or the affair or anything. So first of all, in Indian cinema, means female characters are very, means what to say, are one layered, means they are just a heroine, if we say.
Yeah.
But here, means in many Vishal Bhardwaj film, they are actors. So that is very, means great thing.
No, I just wanted to add something about the politics of the film because it's like what interested me the most. And I think that the beautiful thing, the most beautiful thing is that he doesn't want to make a stand about whether Kashmir has to be independent or not, but what it shows is that the suffering and the horrible situation the country is in, and through many details. One of the scenes that strikes me the most was the man who is unable to enter his own home until he's allowed to, and that's like, it's crazy because it shows how traumatized these people are, and they can't even be in their own home, in their own because they're under threat, like constant threat of violence from every part. And also I think that the fact that they show how the army is constantly it's from the very beginning when Haider's father is taken away. We see like the way the army operates and how it somehow it seems like an occupation, a military occupation, and not really protecting people, but using power and force to make a statement. So that's maybe to me, what I took from the film is that the people are not no one is listening to the people and to what they want, but there's like these forces that are like clashing. And I think that the people who are most in a position of more power is the army, because I mean it's like is always like that. They are, so the fact that in the film we see how they're not like protecting the people, but are part of the problem. It's really a strong statement.
Absolutely, I think he is a lot of time to show what they're actually going through, and those small things that, like you mentioned about that one scene where he's not able to get into his house. Similarly, like if you remember in the beginning when Heather is trying to find his dad, he meets this woman when it's sitting on the table, and like they exchange the photos, and like still not able to but like there's a commonality, there's a shared tragedy in that, and there's a couple of other scenes also where something like a more so even though it's a very one person story, it's still a story of an entire region. Also, very interestingly, Vishal Bhardwaj is not the only writer on this film. The another writer is Basharat Peer. He's an activist, journalist, and now a scriptwriter as well. So it's like, so very interestingly, he was from the region where this film is set, and then he went to study at Aligarh University. but he ended up going to New York and studying further and doing other things. But like that element of Aligarh University student is something that's there in Haider's thing as well. So I think that comes a lot from Basharat Peer's story as well. So yeah, like I think the fact that there was a person the person who wrote the story is also from that region really helps. But otherwise, it's always an outsider's perspective, and that just doesn't make sense all the time. Like especially in a very specific situation like this. So I think that really added a lot more weight to the entire story. And these small scenes just don't come up if you don't have a first person point of view on those things.
That cinema is a luxury for everyone. We enjoy, but now cinema theaters and hall has become a region of terror for all of them. That some choosing of who is the terrorist or who is the one that is they are choosing. So cinema has become a terror. So yeah, art and culture is also been occupied by the authoritative power that is also being shown.
After watching the movie, the biggest thing that I realized is as an adaptation, it does very well. And it does not, completely like Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet is like one of the top things that you'd hear about it is this is one of the most faithful adaptations of Hamlet and everything. Haider does not. If you watch Haider not knowing about Hamlet, you wouldn't mind it as it's a own story. Like it's completely, you could watch it as an independent unit. He said in an interview, someone asked him that, how does it feel to bring these classics as accessible to the modern audience and all that? They were asking that kind of a question. He's like, who said that I want to make Shakespeare accessible to people? I want to make Hamlet accessible to me as a filmmaker so that I can tell what story I want to. Which is why if you see certain adaptations, like Hamlet starts with his father's death. This one tells you about the father's character and dives deeper into it. Then the sequence about to be or not to be, I came to know that it is Hamlet. It is used in Hamlet. It originally stars in Hamlet, and then he is standing in that square and like he's saying "Ke hum hai ke nahi," matching it with Section 370 and all that. That where do we belong and that, and also about Rudar, that he's supposed to be a ghost, right? The name Rudar, and he's just there. In fact, uske scenes, if I felt. If he was not even present, I would have accepted him. Like, is he a ghost? Is he actually there? He's a ghost actually in the play, and here he's a passive, like a presence. So in terms of adaptation, I feel it holds really strong on its own.
But why this Indian Hamlet here is so different apart from the setting is also because most other Hamlets celebrate revenge. They celebrate the third act, where the son comes and takes over and changes things, and now it's a new. So the violence is being justified in some way or the other. Like a very simple example of Bahubali, for example, it's also Hamlet. Like if you
Yes.
one of the very interesting things that was told to Prabhas, the actor, when he was being signed for the film, was that Rajamouli told him that I'm making Lion King and you're going to play both Simba and Mufasa. Are you in? So he just said, yeah, of course. So like, why would I not? But so like, it's very interesting. Lion King is also Haider, Hamlet, all the same universe apparently. Even Batman to a certain extent, if you think about it. So if you think about it, like Haider's position in the society is also the fact that he's from a privileged background. He has maybe the time to remain existential as well. Like I'm not taking away from him whatever he's feeling, but just they come from a certain society. The Prince Hamlet also comes from a certain society. He's high society. Batman is high society. Here, what happens again is the fact that he's cornered to a position or a point where he is supposed to ends up taking justice in his own hands and decides what needs to be done. So he goes the vigilante route. This is exactly so many other characters end up doing. But you either become Batman or you become what Heather ended up becoming. So you either become a villain or a hero, and here's exactly what happened. So I don't think that there's a lot of difference between Batman and Heather. It's exactly the same, just where it ended up probably.